Once upon a time, calling people unhuman got you banned from decent society. They might have even put you in trial. Now, you get booked on Piers Morgan. In this video, we're going to be looking at a debate on the Piers Morgan show. It's a masterclass in fascist framing, and Piers sits there playing referee just like it's another Tuesday. Have a listen.
Jack Posobiec, you posted this. They all have to go, and then Unhumans. And there was a pretty big reaction to that. I mean, what did you mean by calling them unhuman?
Well, Unhumans is actually, Piers, thanks so much for having me on. First time. But Unhumans is the name of the book, a New York Times bestseller that myself and Joshua Lysek put out last year. We talked about the secret history of communist revolutions and how to crush them. And we talk about how in the past the releasing of criminals and the coddling of criminals by people like the Bolsheviks or the French revolutionaries or the Chinese Communist Party were used as terror tactics against their own countries.
Right off the bat, he's talking out of his backside. There is no evidence to show that, to my knowledge, and I've written a book about it, that the French revolutionaries released prisoners to cause anarchy. I have not found any source material to support that. There is the storming of the Bastille to release prisoners from the monarchy, but what he's talking about? It's just mad. Then he mentions the Bolsheviks, who essentially are part of a group that decides they no longer want to deal with monarchy, but they do get rid of a temporary democracy that had been put in place, but wanted to continue its fight in World War I. There's a running theme here, very similar to American history. It's a large group of people saying they've had enough of dictatorship, or maybe a temporary democracy that didn't look like it was going to have an election anytime soon, and replacing it with something else. You know, the foundations of the United States. And we'll come back to those foundations a little bit later. The point I want to make here is that this guy either doesn't know what he's talking about or is fabricating stuff in order to create a narrative. Manufacturing fear, as you will. But there was something else there. Jack said the word unhuman, which is the title of his book. But I've got to say, that reminds me of Nazi terminology, such as Untermensch, which translates as subhuman, something that the Nazis referred to a lot.
The Jew is the eternal parasite, the destroyer of culture. He is subhuman. Heinrich Himmler, Julius Streicher, Der Stürmer, 1938, Nuremberg trial transcript. The Jews are not humans. They are devils in human form, not a people, but a pestilence. And now, Jack calls his book Unhumans, in which he says, communists are not a philosophy, but a terror tactic. They are forces of unhumanity.
Note that the foreword is by Steve Bannon.
Fight, fight, fight! Amen!
This is propaganda with a paperback edition.
And that's exactly what we see the Democrats doing now with the release of and the championing for the release of violent criminals into either the United States or back into the populace. You see this with Soros prosecutors. You see this with the reaction to Carmelo Anthony. And now you see this with this ridiculous political stunt, where Senator Chris Van Hollen is now on a plane down to El Salvador for, I guess, a special visit. I don't know if this is a first date kind of situation while he's down there with Abrego Garcia.
What this is centering around is a gentleman by the name of Abrego Garcia who's been deported from the US, but he was not entitled to a court case to make a decision as to whether or not he had the right to stay in the US. But the bigger issue is involving the Supreme Court of the United States, which has ruled that this is illegal, and the US President Donald Trump is telling them to have his middle finger.
But he's not going to visit with the actual members of the family of Rachel Morin and the 5 children that are left behind, who was killed and by an illegal alien member of MS-13 in his own state. And so you see this problem.
I see this problem. What you've done is associated someone that has no connection legally to a gang group and suggested that they're one and the same person. This is a form of deflection. It is also pretty fucking racist. With that type of logic, you would expect something like comparing the actions of Nigel Farage to that of Starmer because they're both British. It's totally insane, and yet no one's pulling them up on it.
That the Democrats have, where, by the way, I love if the Democrats want to make this their argument for the midterms going to 2026. Please make illegal aliens and support for MS-13. Mike, please go tell all your buddies on the Democrat side. I would love for you to make this your argument going in, that we need more illegal aliens in the country. I'm right there with you because I think that's perfect for the Democrats. They consistently do this over and over and over. And, you know, people say that this guy doesn't have a criminal record. Well, it just broke earlier today that, as a matter of fact, Abrego Garcia did actually have, his wife had a restraining order on him that was filed in 2021, that it was petitioned, a final order was put up. And yet I don't hear anyone talking about this, that in fact he was a wife beater in addition to this information that he was a member of MS-13. And people will sit there blue in the face and say, oh, he was this innocent guy, he was just working. It's simply not true.
Right, but you're saying it's simply not true. You believe 100% he was an MS-13 gang member. My concern about this story is not that if he is a gang member,
the order that he was
gang,
deported was
he
not
be
that
deported.
he was MS-13 member. It was that he was illegal. That was the original order. And then the second order came out that said he was deported to a different country, not El Salvador.
So hold on for just a second. First of all, Jack, great to meet you, longtime fan. Like, you are one of the internet's biggest conspiracy theorists, and I'm very glad to be on this panel with you, so I could just call you out for that. But like everything,
how was your Kamala Harris campaign last year? How did that go? Did that go as well as your weight loss, Mike?
Wow, he got so triggered, he had to attack Mike on his physicality instead of his thoughts or reasoning. I believe the term is snowflake, but I'm going to make this more interesting. Have a listen to this.
This is Vera Papasova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with. It was really difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
Sound familiar? Have a listen to the rest of Jack going mad.
How are you still like this when there's still Ozempic? How are you still like this when Ozempic exists, Mike?
Jack, hang on, let me talk for a second.
Mike, how many steps are you up to today? No, if you're going to come out here and attack me personally, then I'm going to respond right back.
What'd you say to me, though? I didn't hear it.
If you're going to come out here and attack me personally, then I'm going to come right back.
I'm happy to have it, buddy. I'm happy to have it. But look, here's the deal. This guy, this man, Kilmar, they've separated him from his wife and family. They've done it with no due process. There's no evidence.
No, his wife separated him from his wife and family when she filed a restraining order on him. She doesn't want him home. She's in court. She's in court filing a restraining order.
Shut up for a second and let somebody else talk, all right? You're going to get plenty of time. It's a long show, all right? And Piers is going to step in when I'm talking too much. The only person that I've seen talking about this restraining order is you. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But you don't have a track record of telling me.
You don't care about what his wife actually filed in court?
You are one of the biggest liars on the internet today. At the end of the day,
I'm more than happy. I can provide you the order right now. Provide your order right now. Here's the number.
This man is violent. They should have no problem facing a judge, but they don't want to face a judge. They don't want to go through.
She did face the judge.
That's because they know they don't have anything, and you know it too.
She faced the judge when she went in for a restraining order on him.
Yeah, Dinesh, I want to ask you, Dinesh.
You don't know about it because you haven't actually looked up the receipts, Mike.
No, the problem, Jack, is you don't have any credibility on anything.
I'm happy to provide you the order.
Let's try and keep the ad hominem attacks to a limited number, please. Dinesh, you want to get in here?
Yeah, I think this is not a dispute of ill will here. By and large, today, the journalist Andy No reported, and he provided receipts. He showed the court document where Abrego Garcia's wife did file the restraining order. He noted the irony that she is now claiming that he is a wonderful husband and is apparently raising a whole bunch of money off of his name. So, you know, this was what came out this morning with accompanying receipts. I think the big question here is this. On this issue of deporting illegals, who should be making the decision? I think the reason that Trump has declared the invasion, it's part of his way of saying, listen, you know, I ran for election in front of 300 million people, and I was given a mandate to do this. So shouldn't it be my call as to whether or not somebody who is illegally in this country gets to stay here or goes home?
Dinesh has just suggested that because Donald Trump is president, he gets to override the US Constitution. How the fuck Dinesh became a US citizen blows my mind. He doesn't understand the Constitution. The courts, and the US Supreme Court in particular, are there to interpret the laws and the Constitution and make sure that the laws passed by the President and Congress don't override the US Constitution. What this dumb motherfucker is saying is that that doesn't matter. It's all about being president and being elected. The reason for the Supreme Court and Congress in part existing is to create a three-pronged power base to ensure that you don't end up with a dictator, sometimes known as a monarchy. And yet Dinesh seems to be arguing that Trump should be an elected dictator. If Trump says it, then it must be the law. That is as authoritarian as you could get. A tyrannical dictator, maybe elected every 4 years, just like Vladimir Putin.
It was, in fact, Biden's call for the past 4 years to bring all these illegals here. Why shouldn't it now be my call to send them home? These judges have not been elected by anybody.
Apart from in a US Senate hearing, which has to confirm the appointment of a Supreme Court justice. Apart from that election. And of course, these people are nominated by the president, who's selected by the populace. So apart from that...
So sure, there is a due process that should be held, but if you declare an invasion, I think this was the logic of declaring the invasion, and what else do you call swarms, not tens, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but millions of people coming illegally into the country? What is that if not an invasion?
An invasion is led by an army, Dinesh. I don't know if you're able to read or not, or have learned anything, ever. But an army invades, Dinesh, not people fleeing persecution. You don't invade a country with your kids in tow and a backpack full of nappies and a pram. But of course Dinesh doesn't care about that. He's more interested in clickbait and manufacturing fear. Someone else used that term, invasion. Have a listen.
The poison which has invaded the national body, especially since the 30 Years' War, has destroyed the uniform constitution not only of our blood, but also of our national soul. The open frontiers of our native country, the association with non-German foreign elements in the territories that lie all along those frontiers, and especially the strong influx of foreign blood into the interior of the Reich itself.
And I'm far from done, because Dinesh didn't just end with the word invasion, he also said this.
What else do you call swarms,
Yes, he used the word swarms, a word normally associated with insects, but also associated with Nazis. For example, Julius Streicher, who was head of the Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer and was hung at the Nuremberg trials. He said this.
The Jewish people ought to be exterminated root and branch. Then the plague of pests would have disappeared in Poland also, at one stroke. September 1939. Streicher, February 1940, published a letter from one of Der Stürmer's readers, which compared Jews with swarms of locusts, which must be exterminated completely.
When Jack and Dinesh use language like this, they frankly spit on the graves of all of those that died in World War II. And frankly, Piers did nothing to stop this language being used or kick these people off. In fact, he invited them on, and allowing people to use the term invasion and not check it or kick them off, it has the potential to get others to think that that word is acceptable. And if people believe you're being invaded, you'll believe you're at war. And at war, anything becomes justifiable. That's how democracies die, one unhuman at a time. It's also important to note, the founding fathers were undocumented migrants. They crossed oceans without permission, they landed without permission, they took land without permission. And they also started a revolution without permission. If you think illegal migration disqualifies you from nation building, then America shouldn't exist. And if you think calling people unhuman is just strong language, ask yourself why every fascist regime in history said the same thing. Don't say we didn't warn you. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and please click that like and subscribe button. Once more, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube subscribers. You keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to help the channel, click the link in the description. You can even buy me a coffee. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now. Coming soon, not soon enough, my book, Manufactured Fear, The Power Division. This book covers how fear is manufactured, which you've pretty much witnessed in this video today.